Hey, everybody. So today's question in red ink is, can an author produce one book that will publish and make them financially secure and happy and give them fame and fortune for the rest of their life? And the answer is yes. But that answer requires some explanation. So we're going to get into that. A couple of days ago, I published a podcast on my other, um, you know, group of videos, Pros Talking Pros. And I had made the comment that in that podcast that I didn't know one author that actually had published and made like that fame and fortune after being a one-hit wonder. Um, and I was probably speaking in the moment to anyone that I knew personally or modernly, but it was brought to my attention in the comments that I was wrong, that Harper Lee was in fact someone who was like a one-hit wonder that became fame and fortune and all the things. And she's right. The commenter was correct. Harper Lee was a one-hit wonder, but there is some nuance to that question or to that story. And so I kind of wanted to go down the rabbit hole. So I did a deep dive on Harper Lee a little bit, and that led me to another deep dive on how common this really is. So first, let's talk about Harper Lee. Harper Lee published her book in 1960, and she won the Pulitzer Prize in 1961. The thing that you should know about Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird was that it wasn't her first book. Go Set a Watchman was her first book, and she actually wrote that book and it was edited for years with Tay Hohoff, her editor, and they worked on that book for a long, long time. And it was Tay Hohoff that recommended um, that Harper Lee go back and rewrite the book from the child perspective of Scout. And that's how To Kill a Mockingbird came about. Now, when they published that book, I think she sold like 30 million copies the first year. And so she, of course, like, yeah, fame, fortune. And this is back in the 60s. So, of course, this is like huge. Today's world is a little different in the publishing world. So, you don't get the same kind of accolades when you publish today. But, she hit it. She hit it great. And then in 2009, she still reportedly hit kind of a benchmark, or she hit a kind of a status of earning over 1.6, close to 1.7 million dollars in royalties. And that is a lot. So over her lifetime, that book continued to pay her. The thing about that book being published is it wasn't just the one book. It wasn't like reportedly just the book sales that were kind of like sending her these royalty checks. She had the book translated in over 40 languages. There were school curriculums that were built all around To Kill a Mockingbird, and she got the royalties from that. There was also the film rights that she sold that she got the royalties from, and so on and so on and so on. So it wasn't just the book sales that threw or thrust her into this limelight. But I don't think that was really the argument from my commenter. I think she was just trying to make the point that, one book could, just launch a very successful year or a career, and that this is more common than I was thinking. But I actually think it's not as common. I think that common word is actually the wrong word to use. First, Lee was not just a one novel person. She actually wrote Go Set a Watchman, and it should be noted that it took her a long, long time for To Kill a Mockingbird to even like come to light. And then Go Set a Watchman, she published later in life. And then posthumously, after she passed away, there has been also some other poetry and things that she wrote that her family has published. So it's not like she only wrote once and then that was it. Second, there is a claim out there that Harper Lee died with a reported like $35 million estate. The thing is that's kind of a rumor. You can't really validate or verify that number because the money is in the Mockingbird Trust, and that is not money that's disclosed. So this is kind of a guess. So we can't really verify that, but we can verify that her book is continuing to generate royalties, and There's just, Harper Lee. She's Harper Lee. But that's one person. Let's talk about who else out there might be comparable to Harper Lee. So Margaret Mitchell is one that comes up. She wrote one book, Gone with the Wind. It took her 10 years to write that book. I think, let me get the dates here. She wrote the book, I think it was published in 19, oh, I can't remember. I'm not gonna, maybe it doesn't matter. I'm not gonna worry about it. But it did take her like 10 years. It was like 63 that she started writing. It was published. That's not right. Those dates are not right, because it was actually published way before that. Anyway, somebody can tell me in the comments what those dates are if they're interested. I have them, but I'm not going to go searching for them. Anyway, it took her 10 years, 10 years from the time she started writing it to the time that it was published. That's a long time to write one book. Although not unheard of. I have clients in my own repertoire that have taken over 20 years to write a book. So that's not unheard of. But she did only sell the one book and then sold the movie rights. And at the time that she sold the movie rights, I think it was $50,000. That was the highest that anybody had ever been paid for movie rights ever at the time. So that's pretty amazing. And so commercially, she is a unicorn. She didn't write another book, by the way. So she kind of more closely matches if the criteria of a one-hit wonder than anybody else. J.D. Salinger is another partial match. He wrote Catcher in the Rye. There were 65 million copies sold. He won the publisher. I think he won the Pulitzer Prize as well. But he also published another set of short stories. So he's not a one-hit wonder. He did make commercial success with that one book, and it still sells copies today, right? Anna Sewell, she wrote Black Beauty. She did not commercially benefit from her book, although she did only write the one book. It sold a significant amount. It was commercially very, very popular in the US. But she died, I think, a year after the book was published. So she didn't really get to benefit from that as much. Ralph Ellison, he published The Invisible Man. It won the National Book Award, and it's gotten reputedly a lot of, a lot of accolades, but he is more like, I guess, celebrated for being the first Black man to reach that stature, like to reach that pinnacle of award winning, right? The first one. And then Emily Brontë, she wrote Wuthering Heights, and it's another one novel classic. But she also died shortly after publication. And so her book was actually never really like lauded to fame until well after her death, which is tragic in a lot of ways. So anyway, the commenter made this argument that this happens more often than not, and this is something to aspire to. And I kind of want to warn against that a little bit, because while I've listed a few people here, and it should be noted that there's a few like modern day ones, like the author of The Help. She's her book, sold millions of copies and then sold the movie rights. We also have, but she's not a one-hit wonder. Like, she didn't just write the one book. And there's a couple others. I mean, we could talk about, Andy Weir and, other, Brandon Sanderson and these others that are like commercially doing really well, J.K. Rowling, but they're, like I said, they're not one hit wonders. Like, it didn't just take one book. It actually took multiple books. It took a long time. They built their careers on a lot of failures. And that's something that you guys should all understand, is there's a lot of failure that leads to success. So I want that to be out there and on the record. So a list of these memorable, amazing, iconic authors that have had these one-hit wonders, it doesn't actually tell us the odds. It actually kind of more exposes the exceptions to the rule, because what I did is I went down and I looked at some actual numbers. The Authors Guild is a really great organization. It's really good it does author surveys and it reports a lot of income and stuff. Anyway, in 2022, it published a survey of, I'm not sure how many authors that were participated, but it was like thousands, and they all reported the median income from that survey found that the median income of working novelists was about $2,000 a year. Let that sit in. Even though there were some full-time novelists and they were a little higher, their median income was about 10,000, and literary fiction is slightly lower. It's like 5,000. So that was 2022. And I realize that's a few years ago, but these surveys kind of take time to kind of publish. So that was the one that I found that was the most, like, I guess, more established. I will say this, that there is a dangerous phrase that this particular commenter kind of like alluded to, and that's the after publishing a single novel, these persons achieved this financial amazingness. And it sounds as if the author only wrote one draft and then mailed it and then lightning struck. And I want to again reiterate that Harper Lee spent years and years and years working on her novel. Tay Hohoff worked with her, and they actually rewrote that novel from a different perspective to get To Kill a Mockingbird. So that was a labor, I'm sure, of love. And I'm sure, because I work with many novelists and I understand the process of revision, and I understand the process of drafting, that there were probably a few utterances from Harper Lee. I can speculate that she was sick and tired of writing that story. But anyway, Margaret Mitchell, same thing. And I have those dates now. 1926 to 1936 wrote Gone with the Wind, and that's a long time. So there are unicorns, but it's not one easy attempt, right? Like it didn't just take once. So the realistic approach for you as an author, what should this be? Write the best book you can. Revise, revise, revise. Work with editors and professionals that know and understand the industry so that they can help you be marketably viable. Treat your royalties and your advances and your schoolage options and your movie rights and all of those things, treat them as prizes that are layered inside of a plan rather than promises, because there is no promise out there. The dream is real. You can publish a book and find fame and fortune and wonderfulness, but it is rare. It is not something to expect in this business. And I think that's kind of why I wanted to address this issue, is because the conclusion isn't that this is more common than we think. It actually is just that this happened more than once, and it's extraordinarily rare that it happens. So that's ultimately what makes these books a unicorn, in my opinion. So if you are interested in learning more about how to make your book more viable in the market and how to become more commercially successful and help your author career take off, you can certainly hit me up. Join me in my free classes. Join Troy Lambert in his writing labs, his craft labs, where he talks about writing craft. And we will help you work on your craft so that you can become a better writer, and maybe one day lightning will strike you and you can become the unicorn. Hope that helps. Talk to you later.